Hi everyone, thank you for inviting me today. I will be presenting our joint work with my supervisors Odalric and Denis about safe and efficient reinforcement learning for autonomous driving. As you may know, the autonomous driving pipeline is typically composed of 3 layers. First, the perception layer produces a high-level representation of the scene. Then the decision layer chooses a desired trajectory for the ego vehicle. And finally, the control layer executes this trajectory. In this talk, we will be focusing on the decision layer. And what makes this problem difficult is that in the absence of a vehicle-to-vehicle communication, we have to interact with other drivers whose behaviors are unknown. And so because of that, we will be resorting to reinforcement learning. And there are 2 main approaches to reinforcement learning. The first one is the model-based approach, where you try to predict the effects of your actions. For example, you may predict that if you keep driving, the blue vehicle is going to yield. The second approach is model-free reinforcement learning, where you don't try to predict the future, but rather the quality of your actions. For instance, you may learn that whenever there's a vehicle in this area, it's a good idea to brake. And in this talk, we will study both approaches and we will have a focus on safety. Let's start with the model-based approach, which is historically the most popular approach for autonomous driving. And the main idea is that, say you have a deterministic dynamical system with state X and action U and some perturbations omega. The first step is to learn a model F theta of these dynamics by minimizing some regression loss. Then you can use this learned model to plan. That is, you want to compute the policy pi that maximizes your total reward under your learned dynamics. And a limitation of this approach is that it completely ignores the errors that exist between the learned dynamics F theta and the true dynamics F. For instance, if you predicted that the blue vehicle was going to yield and in fact they keep driving, you're going to end up with a collision. That's problematic. And you may think that as you get more and more data and your learned model converges to the true model, things will get better. But unfortunately, this may not be the case. And in particular, if you are considering a constraint optimization problem. Because in this setting, the solutions typically operate in the vicinity of constraint saturation. For example, if you consider a linear program where you try to maximize a linear objective represented by this black arrow, under the constraints that your solutions lie within this polytope, the optimal solutions are going to always be located at the vertices, which means that 2 of the constraints will be saturated. And it's the same for a sequential decision-making problem. For instance, here, the task is to cross this roundabout by maximizing the velocity of the ego vehicle and also by avoiding collisions. And if you plan in this constraint optimization problem with the true dynamics, you're going to have very aggressive behaviors where the vehicle doesn't hesitate to go really close to other agents. And because of that, even if you have a tiny bit of error in your predictions, you're going to end up with collisions. So how do you deal with this issue? One way to do that is that instead of considering a point estimate theta n of your true dynamics, you build instead an entire confidence region that must contain these true dynamics with high probability. If you manage to do that, you can then plan robustly. That is, you are looking for the policy which gives the best performance under the worst possible dynamics within your confidence region. That's what we're going to call the robust value of the policy. Okay, so how do you do these two steps in practice? For model estimation, a good way is to resort to linear regression, which is one of the few settings where there are statistical tools that allows you to derive a confidence ellipsoid for the dynamical parameters. And for that, you have to assume that your dynamics are linearly parameterized. So once you have this confidence ellipsoid, you still need to solve the robust control problem. And that's going to be difficult in general. There is a special case that has been studied a lot in the literature, which is the case where your dynamics are linear and your costs are quadratic. Because then you can show that the optimal policy is a solution of an algebraic Riccati equation. And this reasoning can be extended to the robust control problem. But unfortunately, this kind of framework limits you to only tackle stabilization problems, especially because of the quadratic costs. So you can only track some desired equilibrium state or a reference trajectory that is known. But on the contrary, since we're doing behavioral and motion planning, we don't know in advance a reference trajectory. And we have this kind of obstacle avoidance problems where you can go either to the left of an obstacle or to the right, but not in the middle, which means that the associated reward function is going to have this kind of shapes, which is non-convex and can even be discontinuous when you have collisions. So our framework will have to accommodate for generic cost function and not rely on quadratic shapes. And so let's say we had only to solve an optimal control problem and forget the robust part for a minute. Then one way to do it would be to solve it numerically by using sampling-based algorithms such as Monte Carlo tree search, because these do not rely on any assumption about the shapes of the reward. But the problem is that this kind of sampling-based algorithm assumes that you know a single dynamical model. And here we have to adapt them to the whole confidence region that we have. And we do this in two steps. First, what we want is to propagate the uncertainty we have around the system dynamics through times to bound the set of reachable states at any time t under all possible dynamics in our confidence region and all possible perturbations. And we represent this by a state interval that we want to compute in a way which is valid and as tight as possible. To that end, we have to assume that f, the dynamics, is also linearly dependent on the state x. Otherwise, it's difficult to propagate the uncertainty you have at some time t on x to the future time steps. And even if you do this, so one solution could be that you have at a time step t some bounds over the state. You have also some bounds on the state matrix from our confidence region, and you can combine the two to obtain bounds on the product and thus on the state derivative. So this gives you a first solution which produces valid intervals, except that they are not stable, even in some simple examples where the dynamics is always stable. So you can see that the uncertainty builds up very quickly. And so we had to resort to dig a little deeper and to exploit a polytopic structure for the uncertainty to derive an enhanced predictor, which produce much tighter bounds and which can be shown to be stable under some stability conditions in the form of a linear matrix inequality. And here is the two predictors that we presented, but applied to a vehicle prediction motion. And in the first case, the uncertainty builds up very quickly, so we can't get anywhere close this vehicle. But with our proposed predictor, the uncertainty is much more stable, and we can pass the vehicle safely. Okay, so now that we have these predicted intervals, we can use them to define a surrogate objective as a sum of some pessimistic rewards defined as the worst possible, as the minimum of the reward function over the state interval. This way, we have a surrogate objective, which is not our true objective, but which can be easily evaluated and which we can feed to the MCTS algorithm so that it can find near optimal controls. And what we can show is that since we've been conservative in every approximation that we've made, the surrogate objective is guaranteed to be a lower bound of the true objective, which is interesting because if we manage to find some controls that achieve the desired level of performance, so let's say you don't have any bad event like a collision, then you're guaranteed that these bad events won't happen either for the true system. Still, this approximation is lossy, so there may be some gap here, which means that we are going to act in a suboptimal manner. But we showed that under two additional conditions, namely a smoothness condition for the reward function and a stability condition for the dynamics, then we can show that the suboptimality is bounded. So as we said, the true performance is at least as good as the performance that we planned, which itself cannot be too far from the optimal performance. And the gap is bounded by three terms. We have a planning error, which comes from the fact that we are planning with a finite budget K. An estimation error, which is related to the size of our confidence ellipsoid, and some constant, which comes from the fact that we want to be robust to instantaneous perturbations. And here's what our proposed approach behaves in practice. So we are considering an obstacle avoidance problem where the frictions in the environment are unknown. And here it's what happens when we plan with the true dynamics. As before, this results in very aggressive trajectories which get really close to the obstacles. And so when you plan with the estimated dynamics, which are shown here, you will commit some tiny mistakes and which will lead to collisions. Whereas when we follow the robust planar approach, we bound the set of possible trajectories, which means that we are not getting too close to any obstacles. Show it again. Okay, and here are the results that we obtained for this task on 100 random seeds. And as we can see, when we plan with the estimated dynamics, we have a good average performance, but we have some collisions and a bad worst case performance. Whereas if we follow the robust approach, we have no collision at all, even though we lose a little bit of optimality. Okay, so to do this, we had to rely on some assumption over the dynamics, and especially the state matrix had to follow this kind of structure based on the matrices A0 and phi. And that may not necessarily hold in practice. But the good news is that the adequacy of this model can be tested online. Indeed, if this assumption holds, then with high probability, we know that our estimated dynamical parameter belongs to our confidence region. And in turn, the observation that we get at the next time step has to belong to our predicted interval. So if this is not the case, then we can confidently reject this model. which means that it gives us flexibility and allows us to use multiple modeling assumptions that we can maintain and invalidate whenever possible. And with the remaining valid models, we have to propagate all trajectory intervals and evaluate the worst case outcomes. And this gives us basically the opportunity to incorporate multimodal predictions for our system. Here's an example for an intersection crossing situation. So here's what happens when you plan with the true dynamics. Again, it results in fairly aggressive trajectories. And with our robust approach, here notice that we are using the multimodal perspective to consider all the possible destinations that a vehicle might have. Then our vehicle acts in a more cautious manner and it doesn't try to get too close to other vehicles. Here's another example where the vehicle has to brake because it doesn't know whether the incoming vehicles are going to turn left. And here's another example with many vehicles. And as we expect, if we have a lot of vehicles around and a lot of uncertainty, as it is a worst case reasoning, it's going to produce quite conservative behaviors. But still, if the uncertainty is well estimated, we can confidently have some fairly aggressive maneuvers like this one, where it squeezes into the gap. Or this one, where it exploits the fact that this vehicle has to stop to merge before it. And again, we show that contrary to the traditional model-based approach where you plan with the estimated dynamics, you don't get any failure by following the robust approach, even though you lose a little bit of expected optimality, expected performance. And now for the second part of this talk, I will discuss a little bit the model-free approach. And more specifically, the value-based reinforcement learning, in particular Q-learning-based algorithms, where you try to estimate the state action value function Q, which represent the maximum cumulative reward that you can get from a state with a given action. And the underlying idea is to approximate this function by some parameterized model and to recursively update this model by applying some Bellman operator. And a question you might ask yourself is, which representation can you choose for the state and also for the Q function? And one standard approach is to represent the state as a list of coordinates for each vehicle, and then to use a multi-layer perceptron to represent the Q function. The problem with this standard approach is that the input size is fixed. So you have to use zero padding if you have fewer vehicles, and you can't represent more vehicles than your input size. But mainly, you're also dependent on the order in which you describe the vehicles. For example, if you swap these two vehicles, you will get a different input vector and hence a different output here, whereas it corresponds to the exact same state. So to address this problem, another popular representation is using an occupancy grid for the state, which allows to have a variable number of vehicles and which doesn't depend on any kind of order. But it costs the fact that you have to do rasterization, which means that you're losing a little bit of information here. And this can be combined with a convolutional neural network model for the Q function. And what we proposed is to instead use a third representation, which is based on the list of coordinates for the state, and to use a multi-head attention-based architecture for the Q function, because this allows to have a variable input size, so you can input any number of vehicles, It's also invariant to permutations of these observed vehicles, and it doesn't require any rasterization and loss of information. And we show that on our intersection crossing task, this agent, this architecture, provides the best performance compared to the two baselines. You can also visualize the attention scores within the models to see which parts of the inputs the agent is paying attention to. And typically, these are incoming vehicles. We can see also that the level of attention is sensitive to the distance to the vehicle. And it's also sensitive to the uncertainty you have on the future behaviors of a vehicle. For instance, here, the vehicle has stopped and it's paying attention to what this vehicle does because we don't know yet if it is going to keep driving forward or to turn right. And as soon as the vehicle starts turning, the attention drops because the vehicle knows that it can safely proceed. So the results we presented earlier are for a reward function that is actually composed of two terms which correspond to two objectives. One is an efficiency objective and another one is a safety objective. But if we actually look at these two aspects separately, you can see that the multi-layer perceptron actually provides the best efficiency and the CNN policy is actually the safest. So our attention-based algorithm managed to find some trade-off between the two, but it might actually not be the trade-off that we desire. And if we want to change it, we have to alter a little bit the reward function and start training all over again. And it's difficult to control from the coefficients between these two objectives which kind of trade-off we are going to end up with. And in a way, it's a bit reminiscent of the so-called plastic bag problem, where you're driving on a road and your perception system tells you that there might be a plastic bag in front of you with some probability, but it might also be something more dangerous, such as a rock. And you have basically two options. Either you decide to slow down, which is a safe option, but it's also inefficient and it might not be very comfortable for your passengers. Or you decide to keep driving and it will be efficient most of the time, but you may end up in a collision from time to time. So it's efficient but unsafe. And another version of this problem can happen if you do behavioral and motion planning on a road and you have a vehicle in front of you, and you think that there is a small probability that this vehicle decides to change lane at the last moment, which means that you can't really overtake them if you follow the robust approach that we presented. And so because of this safety constraint, we lose a lot of efficiency, whereas in practice, a human driver would probably decide to overtake because we are comfortable giving up a little bit of safety if in turn we obtain a substantial gain in efficiency. And so to take into account this kind of trade-off, we will consider a perspective where we have two separate objectives. One is an efficiency objective, which is the sum of a reward signal, and the other one is a risk, which is defined as a sum of costs. And what we want is both to maximize efficiency, but also minimize the risk. And so if we aggregate these two objectives in some reward function and we run a reinforcement learning algorithm, our policy is going to ascend this kind of optimization landscape and end up in this set of optimal policies, which is called the Pareto front, which is composed of policies that have a high value because they are very safe, but not very efficient, and those that are very efficient, but not very safe. And basically, all these policies have different trade-off of our two objectives, and all of them are deemed equally valuable by our reward function. And it's hard to control where you will end up exactly. So if you want to have a better control, one way is to adopt a constrained optimization perspective. So basically, what we say is that we want to constrain the maximum level of risk that can be obtained. And we say that it cannot go below beyond some threshold beta. And under this constraint, we want to maximize the reward, which uniquely specifies the optimal policy. And we do not want to solve this problem for just a single value of beta. We actually want to be able to adjust this level of risk, this allowed level of risk in real time. And we want the policy to adapt to this desired level of risk. To that end, we have to augment the definition of the Q function. So it has to take the desired level of risk as an input so that it can adapt. And as an output, you have to predict not only the expected cumulative reward, but also the expected cumulative cost. So it's two-dimensional. And the definition of the optimal value function also changes because it's the one that maximizes the reward under the constraint that the expected cost stays below the level of risk that was allowed. So this means that we are going to have also a parameterized model which takes the level of risk as an input and as an output predicts both the predicted rewards and the predicted costs. And what we show is that under this setting, the optimal value function is the fixed point of some augmented Bellman operator. And so we can apply the same strategy as in Q-learning and apply this operator recursively, iteratively to our model. And the problem is that you might have some convergence issue because, as we show, this augmented Bellman operator is not a contraction mapping in general, as it is in reinforcement learning. And it's only contracting on a subset of Q functions that are smooth enough. But fortunately, we've seen that it converges in practice, especially if we use regularization. And here are the results that we obtain. On the left, we see the reconstructed Pareto front. In orange, it's the result of individual reinforcement learning policies that were trained with a different level of penalties for the cost. So 1 point is one training run. Whereas in the blue points are all results and correspond to one single training of a budgeted policy. And here's an example behavior that we obtained for a two-way road problem where you're driving behind a slow vehicle and there are incoming traffic. If you set the level of risk to some low value, then the vehicle doesn't take any risk and doesn't try to go to the opposite lane. Whereas on the other end of the spectrum, if you allow the vehicle to take some risk, it's going to try to go to the opposite lane to overtake the vehicles so as to maximize its expected speed. But you will have collisions from time to time. And with an intermediate value of the risk, it stays on its lane most of the time and sometimes tries to overtake. Thank you for your attention.